Philly Startup Leaders presents the 2013 Founder Factory Conference. This program was recorded November 21st, 2013 at the World Cafe Live in Philadelphia. Founder Factory thanks these sponsors for their continued financial support. In this video, closing remarks by Cera, outgoing president of Philly Startup Leaders. Introducing Chris is incoming president of PSL, Rick Nucci.
We're near the end of our day. I want to thank everybody for your time and energy and engagement, and hope that you got as much out of the speakers as I did. But we're not done. We have one more. Cera, for anyone who doesn't know him, is the co-founder of PSL, and certainly one of the biggest inspirations for me in terms of connecting with this organization, and you know, as many founders do, listening to him describe why he started this, what it meant to him, was definitely impactful on me. You know, he's been with it from the beginning. You know, although he's wrapping up his time here, he knows I'm not letting him go very far. I'm trying to share office space with him, but he's not. I don't think he wants to be that close. But anyway, Chris is going to say a few words here and give our closing remarks. And then luckily for you guys, he's the only thing keeping you from drinks. And he's actually the guy who wants to be the first in line. So that works out well for all of us. So Cera, everyone.
Is that Patrick? All right. So, is that my phone? Oh, yeah, it is my phone. All right, so before I get started, I just want to say a big, warm thank you to someone who's been a big part of PSL for quite some time now. She's held the job title of, it's really a volunteer operation, but she's held the position of events director for a very long time, but that means sort of like chief events director, chief marketing, person, chief tweeter. I mean, she's held so many different roles and has been hugely important throughout the organization over the past few years. So these flowers are for Gloria Bell, who is also rolling off the leadership team and is going to be leaving. So if we can give a quick round of applause for Gloria, I'd appreciate it.
You're gonna make me cry.
All right, cool. So it's my fellow PSLers. So yes, I am the only thing keeping us all from drinking. And anyone knows sort of the founding origins of PSL, it largely began over drinks. So covering a couple of basics, I used to read the PSL manifesto, but I won't bore anyone with that at the time. Right now, so I just want to summarize a couple of things. So the current mission of PSL is to provide support, resources, and inspiration to tech-focused startup entrepreneurs and to foster the overall entrepreneurial ecosystem of the greater Philadelphia region. That's what we do. Why we exist is because startup entrepreneurs need each other. And where are we going? That's for all of you and Rick Nucci and the rest of the leadership team to figure out. So the origins of PSL began with a collective opinion of many people that there was a lot of startup events happening in the community, but there actually wasn't too many entrepreneurs at those events. And those events shall remain nameless. Some of them are still operating today, and I hope they've improved. I haven't been to any of them in about 6 years. Blake Janelle was the original founder of PSL and the first person to really gather a group of people together on a semi-regular basis to get drinks. And over time, I started to to get involved and help I set up the original PSL mailing list, I set up the website with some others, and overall started to help come up with a group. We didn't even have a name, and I remember going over, do we call it Philly Startup Leaders? We have there was 50 domain names that Blake registered. It was kind of crazy. I wish I could actually see some of them, because it was probably a 5-minute conversation, not really knowing that PSL would still be around 6 years later. So it all started basically around drinks. The first night that we got together was at 10 Stone, which is still there on South Street. And then it was every so often, every few weeks, basically. And then after a while, we'd amassed, I'd say a good group of about 20 to 30 people. And then Blake wanted to hold sort of an operational meeting to say, all right, well, this is great. We can all drink together and talk about business and startups. But, what's really the next, what can we do better? And so we had a sort of working meeting at the Beata Center, and now it's called the Beata Institute at Drexel University. And Blake started out, and it was basically in sort of a workshop format, and he basically wrote on the wall, or the whiteboard rather, a quote from Fortune magazine from Michael Copeland in 2005 or 6, I can't remember. And it said, Josh Kompelman spends half his time in the technological backwater of Philadelphia. And that was basically the start of the meeting. And it was sort of a WTF type of conversation, well, how do we change this perception? We're all here in Philadelphia. We love this place. What are we going to do about it? And so basically everyone formed into groups, and everyone was kind of presenting what they thought the biggest problems were in Philadelphia. And then those groups basically had specific functions. So one was the government group, one was the technical talent group, one was focused on funding, one was focused on technology. And those groups eventually became what is today presently the leadership team. And it's funny too, because the government group quickly imploded after only literally a couple of months, because they were getting absolutely nowhere with the city government, which is kind of a turning point for PSL overall, I'd say, since Bob's been at the helm. But I'll come back to that. So that leadership team has been volunteer-based the entire time. So there has been, I don't want to say hundreds, but easily tens of volunteers that have generously donated a ton of their time over the years. And, I think it's really important for PSL to remain a volunteer organization. And it's basically gotten people that are extremely passionate about what they're doing, and no one is really paying anyone to actually do it. So you end up getting much more passionate people about the city, about entrepreneurship, and about making a difference. And so the volunteer base that started in sort of what you see today in sort of the tech ecosystem here, it's sort of a generational thing. And being a volunteer, there's a lot of benefits to that too. So you basically end up working with a ton of people that you otherwise wouldn't work with, because they work at another company. So you have no natural way to work with that person. But now you're working with them, you're running an event, you're running a panel, whatever it might be. So it's an easy way of sort of vetting future business partners, future co-founders, and that sort of thing. And I'd say, PSL has been, scaled to some extent, largely on the backs of a ton of volunteers, and I think that just needs to continue. And I think there's positions right now on the leadership team, and there's always opportunities to collaborate, even if it's not a formal position. We never had formal positions in PSL. It was always just about raising your hand and doing something. So the origins of this event was originally around something like Startup School. So Y Combinator had the Startup School, which they had done, and I was actually at that first Startup School in 2005 or so. And the idea is, entrepreneurship is not a event. It's a process. It's a career path, and there's so much education that has to come through, and you have to, a lot of it's just pounding the pavement and learning it by yourself, but there's plenty of generations of people that have a ton of expertise that give back, and giving back is a huge thing for building the ecosystem. And I think one of the things that I think is kind of an unfortunate tragedy, if you will, about sort of the bubble that blew up in the 90s and sort of the corridor out in the burbs, is that I felt like when we were starting PSL that entire community of entrepreneurs basically just disappeared. we're starting PSL, and it's like, where are those people? And, largely I'd say a lot of them weren't around. And so, I'd ask to everyone here, like, remember that when you're, several years from now and you're kicking ass and taking names, that giving back is a huge part of growing the ecosystem and growing the community. So this event largely has changed quite a bit over time, but it's still focused on education, and I'd say, for the most part, focused on helping to convert first-time entrepreneurs, which is a huge part of growing the ecosystem. And today, we heard from the founder of Comcast, David Bookspan, Anthony Bucci, Bob Moore, and so many really awesome people, which is amazing, really. And I'd say, in the case of like Bob Moore and Bucci, those were guys that were sort of some of the early fools hanging around in the PSL days, who are now, kicking ass and taking names. So I think, a few years from now, some of you that are thinking about starting something, that could very well be you very soon. So I'll say a few things about sort of Philly in general. I've been thinking about it a lot the past few days. I'm not sure it's all really well thought out necessarily, but just been trying to put some perspective on doing this for 6 years and now stepping down. I had Mike Henkelman, who works for the Philly Daily News, interview me a week or two ago, and he actually said something about sort of the old school generations on 202 and whatnot, trying to become Philicon Valley. I'd never even heard Philicon Valley. I laughed hysterically just thinking about it. And I think for a long time, people have been super obsessed with trying to recreate Silicon Valley here in Philadelphia. And I'd say originally, in my early sort of PSL days, I was really kind of obsessed and with that sort of idea and that concept. And over time, I think the less we look like Silicon Valley, the better. And I think Philly has its own culture, its own benefits, and things that are largely different from the culture out there. One thing that I will say, though, about that culture is that it has generations and generations of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial wealth, and entrepreneurial sort of training. And like I said, when the bubble bursted in the 90s, all those people basically disappeared, and still I don't know where any of those people are, or don't see too many of them for whatever reason. So bootstrapping is a big concept here, and there was actually a bootstrapping conference here earlier this year, which drew an international crowd. And I think it's interesting that companies that are built here are very different than other parts of the country. And I think it lends itself more to sort of a B2B mindset or a services mindset where you think of revenue first rather than raising a big venture round. But I think it forces us to think differently, and I think that should be more embraced than anything else. And I really like what Bob and Alex Hillman and probably some others had come up with, where they said Philadelphia has the best ratio of quality of life to business opportunity, and I think that is spot on. And that also needs to be embraced, because you can actually live in a major city, own a home here, and have a wonderful life, and also have great business opportunities. So there's a lot of changes happening in PSL. Rotation is important for sustainability of the organization, and Rick Nucci is now the new president, replacing Bob Mao. Bob Mao is the new chair, replacing me, and that means I am just me again, which I'm excited about. I'm also leaving the board of directors, and Josh Kompelman and Gabe Weinberger are still on the board, along with Rick and Bob, and we'll see what happens. I'm kind of sad about it, but also sort of excited at the same time. If you read the book Good to Great, and you talk about organizations that can sort of withstand the original founding team or the strong leaders, I think is key. So I think sort of me coming off is a big sign of sustainability of the organization and that we're built to last. So I said a lot about volunteers already, and I feel like I'm now in my second company now, ArcWeb, and my last company, Views It, which still operates today and is still profitable, but nothing to really write home about. I actually met most of my business contacts through volunteering through PSL than I ever did at my last business. So I think, ArcWeb in the last like 15 or 16 months has grown like more than 10x in revenue and in headcount. And I think a lot of that is because of the network I was able to build here strictly as a volunteer. And I think that that is accessible to anyone, because I was just some random fool engineer working in a corner, banging away at a keyboard, writing code, and loving what I was doing. But I always wanted to do some other things. So, all right, switching again. So another volunteer worthy of mention, and I have to say a lot about this person. And I recently gave a quote to someone. I don't know if it ever got published anywhere, but I said, Bob Mal has been transformational in connecting the various disparate technology communities in Philadelphia, including key stakeholders from the startup, independent, investor, and government communities. And I mean that in every sense of the way. And I was going through the list of the stuff that Bob's done as the PSL president for the last couple years. And I think your role as a PSL president is, and I was PSL president at one point in time, but your role doesn't have to be, oh, I'm the PSL president and that's it. It's really just sort of it's sort of a badge. It doesn't end up being like, the only thing that you wear. And, Bob, I'd say, wore the badge, but he also wore a ton of other hats and was hugely, hugely impactful in the community. And so he gets to wear that identity all by himself and not because of PSL. So, Bob basically was knocking on everyone's door, pounding the pavement, and making himself completely available, held office hours, and to any first-time full entrepreneur on the street, Bob would have a meeting with them. He joined the boards of Ben Franklin, PIDC, worked with the World Class Greater Philadelphia Initiative, the Economy League, worked with Alex Hillman to come up with essentially bridging the gap, I would say, between sort of the independent services and bootstrapping culture that's represented at Indy Hall, getting our city government to care about small business and startups. Like I said, we had a government group that basically disbanded out of pure frustration. And he basically got the mayor and a bunch of people in the Commerce Department to actually care about this community and the things that we care about. He testified for city council to help get the partnerships tax removed. That's huge. Basically, that is what allowed venture capital firms to come back to Philadelphia, and that's what, one of the reasons why Josh has come back. I know Wayne Kimball's now at Benjamin's desk. I don't know if that means that he's officially moved his headquarters there, but I think what we're going to see is a lot more venture capital moving into this community in the near future. The Startup PHL Investment Fund, the list goes on and on. So I just want to give a round of applause for Bob Mal, please. And I have no flowers. No flowers for you, Bob, sorry. All right, so I'm wrapping this up, I promise. So yeah, this is my last talk in front of all of you, at least in sort of PSL leadership sense. So I'm excited. There's a couple things about Philly, and I'm ridiculously bullish on Philly. So I think any of you that are considering buying property here should absolutely buy some, because it's going to be worth significantly more many years down the road. And it has nothing to do with just this community. There's just been so much activity that it's really astounding how far the community as a whole has come, specifically technology community. And if you think back to the early founding days of PSL and just all the other organizations that are around today that didn't exist. So I have a list here. So Indy Hall didn't exist, Benjamin's Desk didn't exist, Venture Fort didn't exist, Dream Adventures didn't exist, Philly Tech Meetup, Bar Camp, Startup Weekend, Flying Kite, technically Philly. None of these things existed, and I can't even imagine, I don't even remember what it was like without having those things, but that's literally all been in the last, 5 or 6 years, and I think that that's just pretty remarkable. And you're seeing now generations of people that have worked at startups that didn't forget about the community, such as David Bruson, coming back and giving back to the community, starting their own companies, and, really killing it. Monetate is an astounding example. And, the fools that started out in PSL are now running shit. If you look at, Bob Moore and Anthony Bucci as examples, and they're back here, helping to teach other people, the lessons that they've learned and all the stuff that they've been through. So to go back to the earlier quote, which Josh Koppelman spends half his time in the technological backwater of Philadelphia. We've killed that. It no longer exists, and I think it's a testament to a lot of things in this community. But it's also sort of nice to sort of close the book on that too, because that was one of the reasons why PSL was started. And it's not about Josh; it's about all these other things. But that's just one example. So I think we're just getting started as a community. I think we're going to kill it, and so let's go out there and kill it. Give yourselves a round of applause. Go drink.
We hope you enjoyed this program from Philly Startup Leaders. For more information, visit phillystartupleaders.org. This program is a production of Professional Podcasts, a division of the Lubetkin Media Companies in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, on the web at lubetkin.net. If you'd like to purchase DVDs of Founder Factory programs, visit our online store, lubetkin.net/CubeCart. For everyone at Philly Startup Leaders, this is Steve Lubetkin. Thank you for joining us, and take good care.